Welcome to Seek Reality. I'm Roberta Grimes, and I am really delighted you're here with us today because our wonderful friend Sandra Champlain is our very special Seek Reality guest, and she's going to share with you a terrific book about the afterlife that was presented to us from the afterlife. As you know, Sandra is one of the most indispensable leaders in the field of afterlife education that we have right now. Her own terrific book is We Don't Die. It's the story of her personal trip from doubt, uncertainty, skepticism, but to the nth degree. And then her father died, and they were very, very close. And unlike me, I was a very big skeptic too, but what I did was I did a lot of reading and I convinced myself very young, actually, that life is eternal. But what she did is she really delved right into how people have convinced themselves. She did a lot of the research by actually traveling the world, meeting the mediums, doing the medium stuff herself. And she convinced herself, and the result was that wonderful book, We Don't Die, which is beside her shoulder right now as you're listening, if you happen to be watching as well as listening. And she had convinced herself to the extent that she has made teaching everybody else that we don't die the central mission of the whole rest of her beautiful life. Now, Sandra guests frequently on George Noory's Coast to Coast, where she keeps the world up to date on the latest afterlife news, and she hosts a very popular Sunday gathering that we'll ask her to tell us more about today. She puts out she beats me in everything, two weekly podcasts, one with George Noory called Shades of the Afterlife, and her own podcast is called We Don't Die. And she's with us today for the 19th time to talk about a terrific book just out. It's called Conversations with Eric. That's the other book by her shoulder. Conversations with Eric, Life, Death, and the Afterlife Through the Closed Eyes of a Trance Medium, and it's by Scott Milligan. Now, Scott Milligan is another terrific person who's often part of her Sunday gathering. I've just begun to read this book. I tried to read it in the middle of the night because I split sleep, and then I just was too weary. I didn't get, I think, past the 20th page or something, but it's a terrific book, very accessible to each of us. And frankly, Eric is a hoot himself, even though he's a very serious gentleman and very humble. Oh, my dear, beautiful Sandra, welcome, welcome. I'm so happy to have you back with us again.
Thanks so much, Roberta. I can't believe it's 19 times, but I'm always so delighted to share, and you and I get into the best conversations.
We started talking. Sam is my wonderful, indispensable engineer for all of these podcasts. And we started talking, and basically, he didn't say this, he's too polite, but he's saying, get on with it. Let's start actually doing this podcast because, he has a life too, and he has other things he had to do with his day. But we look at each other's faces and can't stop talking. We started doing the podcast before he was even starting to do the podcast. But let's hear about this book because I think Eric Robert Johnston, who is a Victorian gentleman, and Scott Milligan, wonderful, wonderful man. And what a great trio the three of you are, and the two of them together. This is just such a wonderful book. I couldn't put it down, even though I kept falling asleep because I really had not slept the previous night by working in the middle of the night. Tell me about it.
Sure. It really is a handbook for living life. I'm going to back up because on my journey to explore the evidence of the afterlife, is there evidence of the afterlife? Of course, there is. One of the things I was drawn to was physical mediumship, and that's sitting in the dark and phenomena happening and voices coming out of midair. And I found a retreat center in England that's closed now because of COVID. Anyways, I decided to take a trip across the big pond all by my lonesome to England to attend. what was about physical mediumship, trance mediumship, and evidential mediumship. Now, I really didn't know that trance even existed. I didn't know what it was. And so this young man, Scott Milligan, now this happened 9 years ago,
I
was
remember
sitting,
that you talk about this in your book.
yeah, he was in front of the group with another gentleman by his side. And all of a sudden, the lights got a little bit dim. You could still see, of course. And then these nice, peaceful music started playing. And in about 10 minutes or so, from this young man's voice, now became this booming voice of this elderly Victorian gentleman named Eric. And Roberta, I'm like, what is this? Like, I didn't even know that was a thing. Okay. Didn't even know that was a thing. And out of his mouth came some philosophy about death being the greatest lie, things about life, things about hardships. And so
Oh,
he spoke for about 20 minutes and then he welcomed questions. Now Scott's eyes were closed, okay? And he's in a, kind of a far off place in his mind. And so before I got to even ask a question, Eric's head turned, my hand went up, and he nodded like he knew I had my hand raised. Now, we'll get more into the magic that's happened with Scott's eyes closed in a little while. But I was able to ask a question. And the question really truest to my heart was, I witnessed the suffering of my dad when he passed away from cancer. It
right.
was brutal, brutal. And I wanted to know if there was really any truth. Do our souls leave our bodies before we do? Or do you really experience that much pain? And what is the purpose of suffering? And in a nutshell, he spoke that yes, our souls can escape our bodies, that we don't feel the pain, we don't bring that pain forward into the afterlife. It's a long distant memory. Part of the reason that we have suffering is just part of the byproduct of being human. There's cause and effect. And so that whole world. But I was left with this holy cow experience, right? Like, holy cow. And so after that, Scott and I remained friends. I would take more trips to England to study with him. And I took my own class at the Arthur Findlay College about trance mediumship. Because if this is a thing, like, can anybody do it? And I do believe we all have our guides and inspirers. And if the spirit world is meant to work with you that way, they give you a little taste of it. And not that I'm going to go on to become a trance medium. I mean, maybe I will. I don't know what's in the cards for me. But at the Arthur Findlay College, I had an experience with the whole group of people after a weeks long training on this and doing experiments and things. And on the last day of class, they said, does anyone want to try to do the trance in front of the group? And I raised my hand and I was scared to death because I'm thinking, like, what could happen? Now, the thing is I knew I was in a group of strangers. So it wasn't like this was being filmed or recorded or anything.
Right.
So I took the instruction and basically just closed my mind and just asked if there's any of my guides or inspirers that want to speak through me. I'm happy to share. And so the instruction really is just to pay attention to our breath. Pay attention to our breath and then start off, almost give the spirit world a head start saying, spirit would like to say, and then just see if words keep coming out. Now, they do tell you 99% of this could be you in the beginning and 1% the spirit world. But in time, really, you can build this relationship and they can speak more freely. Okay, so I had my eyes closed after 10 minutes or however long it was. I said, spirit would like to say. And Roberta, words kept coming out of my mouth. I couldn't listen to them because every time I did, the words would stop. Once I started concentrating on my breathing, the words continued. And I had the feeling that I was an old man, that I was telling some kind of a story about life being a journey, like crossing a great ocean. And while I was doing this, I felt like I was speaking. It was a round circle with all the people in it, in a circle. And I felt my body turn like I was talking and nodding and to each person. And after just a few minutes, I sat up and then it stopped. And eventually I opened my eyes and everybody's crying. And I'm like, oh, what happened? It just really touched because I couldn't listen to it or else it didn't speak. But I was well
Right.
aware that stuff was coming out of my mouth. And so When it was done, they said, well, how was that for you? And I said, oh, so weird. I said, I can't believe I moved so much. They said, Sandra, you remain perfectly still. I said, no. They said that was your etheric body. So that was just a taste that I got of, like, this is incredibly real. Now, Scott's been a medium for 28 years. He started when he was a teenager working
Yeah.
with the spirit world, and nobody takes us over. It's nothing scary or anything. It's just a gentle blending of love, right? Gentle blending of energy. And so COVID hit back in 2020, as we know, and we started doing online classes. And Scott thought, why don't we do a weekly healing session that we all sit, play music? He guides people through a meditation of healing. And then at some point, he stays quiet and he invites Eric or another inspirer to share any wisdom. Well, this started becoming what we call in the arms of eternity. These were these conversations
Wow.
with Eric that we could ask questions about life, death, and the afterlife. So they're all held on Zoom. People type these questions into the question and answer box. Scott's eyes are closed. So I'm the only one who can read these questions, and I'm the moderator. So I'll send a little signal for somebody to unmute themselves to say, okay, it's your turn to ask the question next. Or if people are a little uncomfortable, because let's face it, it's kind of weird for the first time to witness this, thinking,
Especially if they don't have any idea.
exactly, because I know exactly what
Right.
that's like. So I say, just put a little note in the Q&A box if you'd like me to ask a question on your behalf. So over the course of now 6 years, we have several hundred of hours of recordings. And I created an online library, $20 a month. People can access all of these. And it's got not only all the recordings, but it says what question was asked when and where. So people can search. And if they have a question, about pets in the afterlife, they can easily go to where the answer is. So that has been in my mind. And then also, if something, God forbid, were to happen to me or happen to Scott, what would happen to all these recordings? And the words are so valuable that Scott and I started brainstorming, like, how can we get this out? So I thought, I'm going to become a publisher. Yes, I am. And so because I'm the one that moderated all of these, I know what the most asked questions are.
Yes.
So there's about 52 different topics within the book that are the most commonly asked about life, death, kids, pets.
I saw the table of contents. Absolutely.
All of that. And so I had transcribed every single one of these recordings, and then obviously had to do quite a bit of editing, but I tried to stay as true to how Eric speaks, because he does speak in a different manner. Eric lived in the 1800s, died towards the end of the 1800s, and he's just a charming individual. And he says,
yes, everybody, I trust that you are well. Yes.
Yeah, I trust that you're well. And he says he's the voice of many. So even though it's him that speaks, sometimes if you ask like a scientific question, he'll become quiet for a moment and there'll be somebody that works with him. You'll still hear his voice, but he can answer every question. And he often says questions lead to more questions. There's not any crazy or stupid questions that get asked. Everybody gets treated with dignity and respect. And I've known Scott 9 years now, and he's a fun-loving, great guy. He stutters a bit. He can't read very well. He's got dyslexia, and he's really brilliant. But sometimes people say, is there any chance that Scott could be putting this on? Not a chance in the world. Not a chance. Not to have several hundred hours of this wisdom. He never hesitates. There's never an or, those things that we human beings do. It's just smooth, flowing conversation. And he just resonates with your soul. And so people can come on our Fridays, not every Friday, because sometimes Scott travels, of course, but they can join for free or leave a donation. But we've got some real tough questions. A lot of people experience a lot of pain, a lot of grief, and with such dignity and respect, Eric answers these questions. So to be able to compile them in the book you see behind me is just the biggest gift I could have got.
Yeah. I mean, I recommend it to, I have just read 30 pages and I recommend everybody needs to read this book. And because you show in the, I think pretty clearly for people who don't get how all this works, just you have Eric, this gentleman, explaining from his point of view what he's done here, and then you've got Scott talking about how he did it, and you talk about it, and so with the three of you are the participants. I think anybody would understand. Okay, that's how it came together, and then the questions start to be asked and answered, and very straightforward. It's anybody would understand that book. But what's great is people get these questions answered. Nobody, I mean, people ask me the stupidest questions all the time and over again. I can just say, hey, buy that book. And all your questions are going to be answered. Thank you. I mean, I appreciate it very much. It would save me a lot of time.
Yeah, it's great.
A
Even
lot of
people
time.
write me and they say, what about this?
Yeah.
Gee, I don't know. And I can go right back to that library and find out what question was asked and then send them a recording. And one thing that's really interesting, just the intellect of the spirit world is, again, Scott's eyes are closed. And every so often, Eric will know a question before I can ask it to him. So my mind's thinking, was this question in the Q&A box before Scott closed his eyes? No, it wasn't. Okay. And then this past time that we had done it, Eric can read my mind. I am 100% convinced of it. 100%. But he read a question that came in midway through from somebody who joined late. The gentleman's name was Keith, and his last name was written there too. Not only did Eric read the question, but he knew the man's first and last name. So he gave me, it's just kind of one of those things where, yes, Sandra, this is real. I am doing this. And I got this little chuckle. Thank you, Eric. You never cease to amaze me. Every so often, he works mediumistically. He says that is not his forte. There's another gentleman by the name of Daniel that speaks through Scott, usually during the seances, not so much on the trance demonstrations, every once in a while, but he can work mediumistically. And I remember once there was someone on and who had a question, and he said, could you go up to your son's room? You still have a pile of comic books. Go to the ninth one down and bring it back. So you hear her little feet. She runs up there, brings it back down. And he says, turn to page number 12. And there you're going to find a picture of a shark and a dinosaur, whatever it was. And sure enough, it was there. And so what followed was a message from her son through him, through Scott. Eyes are all closed. And so Eric can do similar things on rare occasion. He says that's not his forte. He's more about delivering wisdom and answering questions.
Yeah.
But just the intelligence of the spirit world. And Roberta, you and I have studied a lot of things afterlife related. But the fact that I get to be the moderator of this every couple of times a month, it keeps me so recharged that there is a much bigger picture, that love is always around us, that help is always around us, that sometimes these thoughts that come into our mind that seem to come out of nowhere, these ideas that might be in our own voice, but those are our inspirers and our loved ones that are with us. It just
Don't you ever
keeps me coming back.
Don't you ever say, why me? Doesn't that ever enter your mind? Why have I been selected? Why have I been given all these gifts? I say that all the time.
I don't say why me. I actually say thank you. I think,
yeah. But I mean, I'm way past thank you.
yeah,
I've been
think
so many gifts.
the spirit world might have seen what a hard worker I was. I catered for race car teams for over 30 years, working 18 hours a day, cooking for hundreds and, well, thousands of people. And in my mind, I get this vision that they say, okay, we got this big responsibility. We need somebody who's going to get it out there, who's got the strength.
Can do it.
Look at this girl. Look at how well she's cooking down there, And so what Eric calls me is, what does he call me? The medium's medium. Just that I'm able to get the voice of spirit to so many people. And between We Don't Die and Shades of the Afterlife, I'm now over 730 hours of episodes, unique episodes. And so every so often on Shades of the
You're ahead of
Afterlife.
me now. I remember when we were the
It's
same.
not a competition, though, not a competition. But I do play some of the words of Eric on Shades of the Afterlife, and people always want more. So to
Isn't
be
that?
able to have
Oh,
this
yeah.
book
And to hear
is
his
great.
voice, that must be wonderful to be able to do that. But no, seriously, Sandra, I've come to a place in my life when I look back on all the gifts that I have been given from, I don't even think of it as the other side or the afterlife, from spirit, just from spirit, that I have been given. And I don't deserve a tenth to have been given a tenth of what I've been given, the knowledge, the opportunities. And I now I say, why me? I don't know why I've been given all these gifts. So I say them to Thomas. I say, I don't understand why me. And he just always says the same thing. He says, why not you?
Why not? Yeah, I like
You
that.
know,
That's what
that's
I'd
all
say
he
to you
says.
too.
I don't get it. But I just feel that we have been uniquely blessed with spiritual opportunities, with spiritual knowledge. I mean, the certainties we have. I mean, I just wrote, and I'm writing the second phase of it this coming weekend. What it's like to die, and now I'm writing what it's like to arrive, and what will happen next and what will happen after that. I can write this from my mind because I have learned so much. And again, I say, why was I allowed to know this? It would have been so easy for literally Thomas put so many books into my hands 50 years ago, 49 years ago, 48 years ago. He guided me to book after book after book in used bookstores in Boston in the early 70s when I was living there and going to school, going to law school and so on. He didn't have to do that. He didn't have to make it possible for me to know what I know now. That's what I mean. Why was I given the, this knowledge that I now
Big ego,
share?
Roberta. I know you know this in the spiritual world. There's a lot of people that claim to be spiritual, and it's a bit about ego, money, etc., fame, fortune. And I think you and I are just mirrors for each other. We just want to share the message, make life a
Yeah.
little bit
But I
easier
mean, I
for
was given
people.
the chance to do this.
Yeah, ditto.
I don't know. I just think it's so astonishing.
But Eric's words go right hand in hand with
Oh,
when I first
yes.
met
You
you
know, that's
with
why I love
your
your
words.
book. I want to
The,
find time to read it just for fun.
yeah, the fun of dying was what introduced me to you. And I have to tell you, it was right after my dad passed away. And I was so angry by your book title. I'm like, The
A lot
Fun
of
of
people
Dying,
hate
how
that
dare
title.
she? And but it had me read it and just opened my mind to, oh, okay. And it gave me so much hope. And I thought, how do I meet this woman? And that's how our friendship started, and
I
I know
remember
you
going
studied.
the first time we went out to lunch, and I just thought you were so delightful just from the moment I met you. You were so delightful.
Thank you.
I thought it was a stupid name too. I can't remember what I had. I had a different title for it. It was a really awful title, but the publisher refused to use the title and said, "If I come up with a better title," and so the title came from Thomas. He gave me three titles. I woke up with them in my head the next morning. The fun of dying, the fun of staying in touch, the fun of growing forever. I said, "Oh, okay." I didn't know Thomas then, but I thought they were probably better titles. But dying is fun. What's fun about it is you suddenly realize you didn't die. Oh, that, yeah, okay. I
Right?
can
We're
live
still
with
us.
that.
We're still us. We look through our eyes and although we have memories of when we were children or whatever, I mean, we're still us looking through the same eyes. My grandmother passed 1 week short of her 91st birthday. And she said, I'm still the 21-year-old inside. She says, I just look different and things don't move as well. So when we do close our eyes for the last time, we're still us. But all of a sudden, there's our loved ones who had passed before us. There's our pets. We're like, Oh, we're still us. That's a good
Yes,
title for something.
that's what the
But we
title is about.
are.
Yes.
Yeah, we're
If
still us.
anything
So
is more fun than that, I can't imagine what it is. Finding
yeah,
out.
and there's colors that don't exist here in this world, and
Yeah,
sounds
think
and
about
music,
that.
and everything's alive with energy, and we talk to each other just psychically,
What
and
better title
we can
could there
create
be?
anything
Right?
we want. We can explore. We can go to the halls of learning and just discover anything from the past.
Even
Oh,
stupid little things like you're in this house that they brought some people into. They you design the house on paper and then you give it to these people who are 7 feet tall from the sixth level and they think it into existence. Oh, that was pretty fun. And then you go into the house and you say, but I wish it had. And you think of something and you turn around and the thing you thought of is now there.
yeah. How great is that? And we get to pick the best age, health, weight, glasses, no glasses, however we want to be. If we're missing some limbs, we've got them. Children that go as babies, their parents can raise them on the other side. It's wonderful. It is just wonderful. So, yeah, fun of
There's a
dying.
wonderful story in the literature of a woman who was so disappointed because she now had a memory of having been an African queen, and she said, "The thing is, everything is wonderful, but I remember this lifetime I had, and I was this African queen. I wish I could be that again." And she got to be the African queen again. She got to look like and re-experience that lifetime. And I mean, you can do whatever you want, you can have. Think about that.
Well,
That's
and we can be in two places at once. Eric says that he's sitting next to his wife watching a game of cricket while he's talking to us. I think the intelligence in the
that's
afterlife is going to be
wonderful.
so much more than we could even imagine because we're
Well,
trying to.
we reoccupy our entire greater mind, and that's probably why he's able to do that.
Yes, probably. Somebody just asked me not too long ago in an interview where I think heaven is, like out there somewhere. And I think, no, we're part of it.
Yeah, yeah.
It's not out there. We are part of it. And that's why I
No,
think they can
no, we're
so
part of
easily be with us.
consciousness. We're living within consciousness, and it is part of consciousness too. So it's all part of the same thing.
Yeah, it's
As
very
Max Planck would tell
interesting.
us. Yeah, this is just what we do with our lives is the most fun you could possibly have. And I've tried to tell people that. They've said, people have said to me, why do you study the afterlife? And I've said, because it's the most fun you could possibly have. And I guess that's part of why I think, why me? Why did I get to have this wonderful life? And people don't get it though.
And it's not doom and gloom. I have a gentleman
No, the opposite.
associate that every time he talks to me, he's reminded of his deceased loved ones. And he's like, I don't know how you can talk about death all the time. Like, I don't talk about death all the time. I talk about
Talk about
life.
life. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's like, don't be afraid to call me because I'm not gloom and doom lady. I'm about life here, life there, that they're still around. Our loved ones are very much still part of our lives. We're going to see someday how hard it is to communicate from their angle. We're going to see what
It
it's
is,
like.
it is hard. And that's the thing I think that when I do transition, one of the things I want to do, and maybe you and I could do it together when we're both there, is figure out how to make it easier because it is just too hard. We have to figure out how to make it easier. We'll work
I
on that.
think we're lying the lines right now just because our interviews, our episodes are going to be out forever. And one of the things that I know with myself, with loved ones, is they use that psychic communication that we use when we transition because we don't need to talk when we're over there. We just think it, and there it is. We can
Right.
talk to
That's right.
people. And I believe that we have that power of soul, that soul power now, but because of time and space, it doesn't occur to us. but we all have had the time that we've thought of somebody and then the phone rings and it's them. I
Oh, all
think
the time.
that's this in action. But I also think to our loved ones that have passed, take some time, quiet your mind, think of some of the fun memories with them. And then it's not too long when all of a sudden things pop into your mind. Like, where did that come from? And I think that is them communicating back with us. So I could be busy editing a podcast, Roberta, and all of a sudden I'm on the beach in Cabo San Lucas with a gentleman friend that I had that is now deceased, right? Like, where did that come from? Well, he just put that in there because my
Yeah,
mind had
yeah.
no business thinking of that. So I'm just like, hey, Mike, hey, thanks. Thanks for being
But see
here.
how it enriches our lives to be close to people who have gone ahead. I mean, just knowing about all that we do about the afterlife so enriches our lives. When people ask me, like, why isn't this a depressing thing that you study? Just think about it. It turns all of life from basically a tragedy into a comedy. I mean, no, what could be more important than that?
Yeah, if we imagine right now somebody goes on a vacation. Okay, they went off to Disney World. Okay, great. So, Sandra, I'm not going to talk to you for a while. I'm off at Disney World. So they're having a great time. They're living life. They're on the rides. They're enjoying themselves. Well, that's what it's like when they pass. Okay, now they're not coming back in 2 weeks, but we will see them again, and they are living a joyful life,
In
having
the
a great time. So, but it's our human element that grieves, and we know the more we love, the tougher it can be. So that's why I do everything I can. Chapter 10 of my book is about how to survive grief, just to give those tools of what's going to happen to this human machinery we have, really,
Yeah.
how it works, how it processes grief, things that we can do to move through the pain a little easier and things, and just to know that our loved ones are around and keep talking to them. We can ask them for signs and pay attention. And there's many things that we can do to stay in touch and to trust. I know it's tough. I know it's tough. I would like nothing more than to give my dad a big hug again.
Which you
But I
will
will.
do. Which
I will.
you'll definitely do. But you will do it. If you did not do the work you do, you would not know you will do it. That's a
That's right.
huge improvement. The
Mm-hmm.
thing is, if we didn't do the work we do and have the certainty that we have about these things, life would be a tragedy. Knowing
It
that
would be.
any day could be your last day, knowing that any day could be the last day of people you love, that's a tragedy. I'm sorry, it is. Material life would be a tragedy. And as it is, it's a comedy. It's a
Yeah.
silliness because it's so brief. Turn around and they're tiny, turn around and they're grown, turn around and we're all old and then we die. That's
And
so
we
silly.
have to trust in the big picture too, because when we get a cut, our hand heals itself. Our bodies know just what to do.
Yeah,
In the aging process, it knows what to do. We may not like everything, but things happen. But even the deathbed visions, there's been just thousands and thousands of cases of people
oh,
just
yeah.
sharing who's there. Why wouldn't we think that the dying process would have an intelligent design when there's so much instinct and things going around? So just knowing that there are people that help us across, and then we're greeted by our loved ones and, like welcome home, I love the expression that our life here is just a thread in the fabric of our souls. But I think we have to buy into this human beingness to play this game of life.
Yeah.
I to a certain extent, anyways. It's tough here, but then there's joy here, but then we learn here, and then everything we
Which is
learn,
why
we can go
it's
on to
tough
help other
here.
people.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
like we decided we're going to take calculus. We're going to take something tough. And that's why
right.
we came.
But we've forgotten, and then we try to remind. Oh, we picked this. Oh, okay. Then it helps us reframe instead of being a victim of what happens to what if I am responsible? And
Yeah,
I'm not saying bad
I
things
picked
don't
every
happen because they
single
do.
bad thing that happens to me, and I know that for certain. But I also know for certain that nothing that happens to me is something I cannot manage. That's
That's right.
guaranteed. That's for all.
Absolutely.
We
And then
all.
that reminds me of fear. We start thinking about things that we're afraid of. And then we have to trust that if we look back on our life, tons of stuff happened, tons of times we were afraid, but we have the ability to handle it.
In
So to
every single case. Yep.
shut fear down, because we're all still human, start thinking, well, our future selves are going to be able to handle it. I don't need to think about that right now. Let's come back to being in the present moment. And I think the present moment really is where the presents are, like gifts, because we can
Yes.
tap into our psychic abilities, the unseen world, that higher part of ourselves. And everything that I'm sharing right now, this is all part of conversations with Eric, because this is where so much of the wisdom comes from. And
Yes.
it resonates with my soul. Certainly, there's things I say, or maybe you say in a podcast, that people think, oh, I don't know about that. But it doesn't matter. We find what resonates with our soul, with our truth, and it empowers us to live life. That's what's important.
Yes. Every day is a gift. And as you say, that's why it's called the present. Yes. But it's the thing is our higher self knows how much better it's going to be for us when we get to go home. And that's why there are specific exit points which we planned into this life as soon as possible. Our higher self, for as a gift to us, will choose the next exit point. That's baked in the cake. We are going to go home as soon as we possibly can. And the fact that we're still here means we've got more stuff to learn, more growth to happen. And I look forward to that. I'm excited about what's still to come.
Roberta, I think you and I and other pure-minded people that are all about service are going to be around a long time, because there's a lot of work to do.
I've never told anyone this, but we went through a negotiation. When I found out that my guide had been in a previous lifetime Thomas Jefferson, and he died at 83. And so I said, okay, that's fair. I get to die at 83 too. He said, no, 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 you can't. Apparently, I'm supposed to live a whole lot longer than that. So we had to do a renegotiation, and I have now got a significantly later exit point that I'm supposed to take. So we had
Scott
to.
has a story of a medium, and I don't remember who it was, but it was someone who gave most of their life to the spirit world in delivering medium readings. And she says, I just want some time for myself. And she said to the spirit world, it's been lovely working with you, but I'm going to retire. She died the following week, and this is not to be a gloom and doom story, but just that, that was maybe her exit, but she was no longer useful for the spirit world for that mission. And I think, while we need to do everything we can to be healthy, those of us, and you don't have to be in service to others by writing a book or having a podcast or talking to the
I
afterlife.
love the work.
Just be a listener, just care about other people, do
Uh,
everything you can to make somebody's life a little bit easier. And those of us in service, I think we're going to keep being used for that, because I think that's what leads to peace. If it starts within our hearts and starts within our families and starts within our lives, that we
if
can
I
be,
can't do this work, I want to go home the next day too.
yeah,
Yeah, I love doing this work. Oh, my dear Sandra, I just this work is the most fun there is. Every time I get to write another, and do another podcast, every time or make a new friend, I make new friends with podcasts too. I stay in touch with some of them, and write another blog post. What have I not written about lately? Oh, yes, because Thomas will always immediately, he's always over at the side of my body. He'll always immediately say, well, we haven't written about this or this or this. And we write another blog. Yeah, it's just so much fun. What I get to do when I'm no longer excited about doing it. Yeah, then I'd like to go home. But no, I love what I do.
me too.
I
And I
mean,
love to share.
yeah, that's a gift. And as you say, we're putting all this material out into the world. and it'll be found by other people after we're through with it, and they'll make it their own. They'll redo it in their way, add the cultural details of 100 years from now or 200 years from now. And it'll be theirs. They'll put their name on it, which I love. I love to think if in case someone comes across what Sandra and I are saying today, yes, put your name on this. Pretend, own it, make it yours.
Yeah. It's
Doesn't
never too late to start either. If we want to get back to conversations with Eric for a moment, people ask, who are you, Eric, and why do you do this? Eric said he wasn't a good guy. His life was more about money. He wasn't
yeah,
very kind to his wife or his kids. He's had kids that passed before he did. His wife passed before he did. Yeah, and that's why he says it doesn't matter how old we are, there's always an opportunity. And so he changed his life from the spirit side of life.
isn't that
And
a lovely story? Yes, I
yeah.
remember seeing that a little bit. I think even in the part that I read that he was remaking his life.
And the moment he passed, his wife and his children were right there to greet them or
Cool.
greet him. And he said that he works with Scott, that they met up before this lifetime and made this agreement about how they'd work together. And Eric also says that he's a friend to all of us. So he says, while we all have our own guides and inspirers, he says he's keeping an eye on us. We can talk to him. And he says, if you get some message and wisdom in, he says it will probably sound like your own inner voice, but it can be whether him or one of our own guides. And I just
Yeah.
love that. He says he's a friend to all. And he said, when this is what I love, he said, when we pass away, he says, I'll be there to greet each one of you, but he says, I'll let your friends and family be there first and your pets. And off to the distance, after you've said all your hellos, there I'll be. And I'm like, oh, because I love this man. I truly love him. To have somebody who's so kind and considerate
Yeah.
and loving and says just the right thing all the time. How can you not love him? And meanwhile, Scott's eyes are closed. His mind is checked out. And then when the trance demonstration ends and Eric sends his farewells, it takes Scott about 5 minutes or so, and then he just kind of comes back to life. We've been doing classes online on Zoom about trance and the altered states for people that are interested in this. But one of the classes that he did, he actually explained like what it feels like to him, and he closed his eyes and he just explained, okay, now I feel like this warm love comes over me, and he says I feel the presence of Eric, and he starts speaking slower and slower, and next thing you know he stops talking, and then when he comes back after it was over, he explains how it feels, kind of like his mind is coming back in, that they're still around, that they've stepped to one side. But during the same time, after Scott stopped speaking and Eric started, I asked Eric, what is it like from your side to blend with him? And he says it's difficult because when the mind is busy, he says what does he say? He says Scott's mind is like a horse running into a burning barn, right? Like it's all over the place. So he
Yeah.
says really has to wait for Scott to come to that quiet place in his mind before that blend can take over. And even sometimes when the trance demonstration ends, it's because, Scott's mind is starting to come back. So they have to say their farewell. But he gave the impression from the spirit side of life. And I thought, that is just fantastic intelligence.
That is beautiful. I mean, it's wonderful to sort of peek behind the curtain and see how it really works.
Absolutely. Yeah. And like I said, he's got Daniel that speaks through him a
Yeah.
lot in the seance conditions, but every so often he'll come through. And then there's also a Native American, called
And we
Morning
haven't even
Star.
talked about that.
Yeah,
Yes.
a morning star that will speak through. And normally it's words of philosophy. And, he speaks just like you would think of somebody who lived in the 1800s, 1700s or 1800s, really. And now in the trance state also, it doesn't happen on our Fridays together, but I've witnessed it within the seance room. Scott only speaks English, but those that work with him can speak different languages. They've talked to people in different languages who are in the room. that intelligence is there. It's incredible.
It's amazing. It's amazing. Oh my goodness. Oh, and we are so out of time. I'm so sorry. We'll have to do this again so soon. Oh, my dear. I'm so glad to see you though. It's great. And but we're gonna when I go to Massachusetts, we always have a meal together and spend 2 hours just to talking, as you can imagine. As you can see, we just love to talk to one another. Um, what do you want people to take away from what we've been saying today? What do you want everyone who's been listening to sort of have to think about?
I think to say that you're never, ever alone. Those in the spirit world certainly give you your privacy. Don't think that they don't. Oh, you have your personal time. You do, but they're only one thought away. Your loved ones, your guides, your inspirers, they're with you. Talk to them, use them. If you want to have a notepad and write, and then just what if somebody was going to respond back? What would they say? The messages that are loving, that resonate with your soul, that's could be your soul speaking, it could be your loved ones, it could be your guides. Negative things that come through, oh, that's our inner critic. That could be our subconscious. Throw that stuff away. But the more we work with them, we have these silent friends that work with us, the more we'll know their presence. But we are never alone. We are supported. We are one of a kind, and our lives matter. So don't beat up on yourself. You're living life just the way it was meant to be. And through your story, you can make a difference with others.
Oh, so beautifully said. Oh, thank you. Thank you so much, darling. We're going to do this again. I will be right back. I'm just going to tell everyone who I'm going to be talking with next week, but this has been so perfect. Oh, my beautiful friend Sandra. But once again, my beloved friends, we've run over time and we've come to the end of this hour. This has been Seek Reality with Roberta Grimes. I'm very happy you could be with us today. Please never forget that you are a powerful, eternal being. You never began and you never will end. And when you really understand all the implications of that fact, it's going to change everything in your life for the better. Next week, our guest will be Bo Williams, who recently was interviewed by Sandra, and I'm looking forward to this. I just have started to read his book. It's called 1 Year with My Soulmate, and I started to read his book, and it shocked me because it was it's beautiful, but unfortunately, um, his soulmate dies right at the start of it. She kills herself. Oh my goodness, what a beautiful couple. But according to Sandra, immediately he begins to get signs from her. So please join me next week and we're going to together discover the beautiful signs that he does get from her. But wow, what an opening to this amazing book. Today, we have been talking with our wonderful, wonderful friend, Sandra's and mine, the truly irrepressible Sandra Champlain, who has been with us for the 19th time. She's been sharing this terrific book entitled Conversations with Eric, Life, Death, and the Afterlife Through the Closed Eyes of a Trance Medium. Scott Milligan is very young, but he's a very well-developed trance medium who works closely with Sandra and with Eric, and Eric rather, who communicates through Scott. And wow, their book is amazing, and it's very highly recommended. I'm going to finish reading it. I usually don't, frankly, finish books after I've talked with the guest who's talked about the book, but I'm going to finish this one, and I recommend it because if you have questions about the afterlife, the best person to talk with about those questions and get them answered well is someone who is in the afterlife. And if you go to wedon'tdie.com, you can learn more about the ways in which Sandra helps people, especially her Sunday gathering, which is growing and is just a beautiful way in which you can interact with people who are just, I think Sandra, I want to go back to you for a second and just have you tell people what happens at your Sunday gathering. So
Oh,
please
thank you.
quickly tell people.
Yes, it's a 90-minute, non denominational, empowering, inspirational, and fun service, 2 o'clock Eastern Time, every Sunday on Zoom. Within it, there is motivation, inspiration. We do an address. We've got great music videos, but the last half of it is a medium demonstration. So we have medium readings happening all over the world. And so people's loved ones come through and we get to see just how close our loved ones are. There's always a theme. So you'll leave with a smile, you'll leave with inspiration for your life, but you also leave knowing how close those in spirit are. So you can find the link to our Sunday gathering at wedon'tdie.com. Also, for our next time that we're with Scott, if you have a question for Eric, come. It's called In the Arms of Eternity. We'll always have one on the calendar. So just come, or you could watch replays there as well.
WeDon'tDie.com. I think, just go there and you can find out what she's up to now, which is always something exciting. And just quickly, Craig Hogan is the president and guru of Seek Reality Online, your one-stop resource for all things afterlife as well. Life is eternal, whether you like it or not, so it's best to learn as much as you can so you can start your own eternity just knowing everything possible, because the fun then can start even better for you. And that's all that I can tell you, because we really run over our time. So once again, this has been Seek Reality with Roberta Grimes. Please enjoy, please make the most of this coming week in your one reality, always knowing that you are a powerful, eternal being, and you, most of all, believe it or not, in this whole universe, you are infinitely, eternally, and perfectly loved.